Hello, fellow investor. I want to welcome you to this channel. In this video, we're going to look at the earnings expectations for ARCC, Ares Capital. ARCC is scheduled to report third quarter earnings on Tuesday, October 28th, before the market open. So I'm going to have to scroll down here a bit to find ARCC. There's so many companies reporting on that date. I'll cover several topics in this video to see how ARCC is trading going into the earnings and help set expectations moving forward. We review the current price chart and trend charts along with some key valuation metrics. I'll also share my ARCC portfolio holdings and performance. Let's get started.
Ares Capital is scheduled to report third quarter earnings on Tuesday, October 28th before the market opens. In the previous quarter, ARCC reported revenue of $745 million, missing revenue estimates by $5.39 million. ARCC reported earnings of 50 cents per share, missing estimates by 1 cent. For this quarter, the revenue estimate is $766.57 million with earnings of 50 cents per share. Over the last 90 days, 2 analysts raised estimates and 5 analysts lowered estimates. ARCC meets or beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 91% of the time. ARCC is showing negative relative strength going into earnings. The options market is pricing an implied move of plus or minus 5.9%.
We'll start off looking at our analysis of ARCC on a 3-year chart, because in 2023, about March or April, they really started on a pretty good price run. So I added this trend line here just so we could see how it got extended above that trend line and pulled back below that trend line. But we finally reached our peak in July of this year when we started on a downtrend. But you can see here at the beginning of 2025, we got very extended above that trend line. And then in April with the tariff announcements, we got very extended below that, and it did recover back to all-time highs in July. So now I'm going to switch to a 1-year chart just so we can see from that July high that we did enter into a downtrend. So I've connected the downtrend line to the high we saw in September and the peak that we saw in July, just to give us an idea where ARCC is currently trading. They are trading below today, above a 20-day moving average that had been declining. It looks like it's rolling over now and may be increasing if the price on ARCC continues to improve. The 50-day is declining and crossed below the 200-day about mid-October, and the 200-day is beginning to level out. It had been increasing, but it is beginning to level out. We do have an RSI that is a little below the midpoint, so it's in bearish territory, currently sitting at 45. We have a PPO that has been negative since the middle of September, but we did have a bearish crossover in mid-October, and the shorter term average is beginning to pick up some speed, and these histogram bars are getting a little bit larger as the price momentum continues to the upside. We did see accumulation up to its peak over this 1-year period in July, And since July, we've seen mostly distribution. That seemed to have bottomed out here on October the 18th or so, and does seem to be improving at the moment. We do have money flow that is negative and currently sitting at around 0. Over the past year, ARCC had outperformed the S&P 500, but currently it is underperforming by about 12%. It is also underperforming the financial sector ETF. They are an asset manager, and they are underperforming the asset manager industry group by about 2%, and that group is underperforming the S&P 500 by about 10%. We'll move to the 5-year weekly chart, which compares pairs of averages representing a long-term view, a medium-term view, and a short-term view. We can see that ARCC, the shorter-term averages have been higher than the longer-term averages, giving us a positive differential between those two averages. We can also see in the midterm that it has spent most of its time in positive territory. We did move into negative territory about a month or so ago, and we had a negative momentum in about April of this year. And also on the short term, we can see that it did move into negative territory about July and spiked down, but does seem to be improving somewhat and may cross back over into positive territory shortly. We'll look at some key valuation, growth, and profitability metrics from Seeking Alpha. We can see that ARCC has a forward PE of 9.95 times compared to the sector median at 10.74 times. The expected EPS growth rate for ARCC is minus 6.03% compared to the sector median at 9.90%. We can see the growth of ARCC for revenue is 6.4% compared to the sector median at 6.83%. And then turning our attention to profitability, we can see that ARCC is very profitable compared to the sector, with a net margin of 44.94 compared to the sector median at 23.29%. We'll look at ARCC in FASTgraphs. We can see that they're trading at a blended PE of 9.67 times. They have an EPS yield of 10.34% and a dividend yield of 9.62%. Over this 13-year period, we can see that they've had an adjusted operating earnings growth rate of 1.62%. FASTgraphs calculates their fair value ratio to be 11.74 times, and their normal PE is 9.71 times. That's what the market applies to ARCC. The gold line is a representation of the fair value calculated at 11.74 times, and the normal PE is the blue line. So over this period, we can see that it tends to trade below its fair value, but it will oscillate above and below the market multiple, and that tends to be a pretty good time to pick up shares of ARCC. So in January of 2024, it got a little bit extended above the normal PE, and then again in January of this July of this year. So this was January and February of 2025, and this is the July peak, if you remember those from the chart. So since July, it had drifted down due to concerns about private credit and loans, concerns that got applied to many of the BDCs. So many of them have tended to trade a little bit lower than they had in the past, but they bottomed out, it looks like, and now moved back to their normal multiple. So this is going to be an interesting one to watch here in the near future and see how those credit concerns turn out. If we look at their earnings over this time period, we can see they've had several years where they had contracting earnings. For 2025, they're expected to have contracting earnings, and then the analysts are estimating that they're going to have about a 1% pullback in their EPS and about a 4% pullback in 2027. So we need to be careful and watch where the pricing is, because if we purchase today and it continues to trade at its fair value, we could have a rate of return of about 8.39%, but the growth would actually be negative without dividends. With dividends, that's what keeps it positive rate of return. Turning to my trades, I first entered into ARCC in March of 2022. I've made a total of 28 trades. 9 of those are currently open. I have 19 closed trades. 27 of those have been winning trades, and 1 has been a losing trade, one that I purchased recently. So I have a total loss on that one trade of $5.50. But on the 27 winning trades, I'm sitting at nearly 12,000. I did have the beginning of this year, I did have about 1,500 shares, but I have trimmed that to 500, and then I purchased back about 130 shares. So my average cost is at $18.13. I have a total return of 31%, and on my current holding, that is 79.1%. So I have a win rate of 96%, and my gain to loss ratio is 80.1 to 1. I can show you some of my trades that I made in 2025. I have on this chart a horizontal line colored in cyan, and that basically sits at the book value from the last earnings report, currently at $19.88. And I really like to purchase assets like this that trade on their book value. I like to pick them up as I can below that value, which doesn't necessarily happen very often, but I find that that's the best time to buy. So when I came into the beginning of this year, I had quite a few more shares, but I could see that the price was getting pretty extended from that horizontal line. So I just started trimming as we came in to 2025. As we got closer to the tariff announcements, there was a little bit of a pullback, so I traded out of some positions. We did go on quite a run back to the July high, and I sold 40 additional shares, and then as it started trending down, I trimmed another 100 shares, and I was down to 500 at that point. And then as we got below the cyan colored horizontal line, which represents their book value, I started building back my position as the trade, the price was getting a little bit stronger. So it looks like today they traded intraday to above that 21-day EMA, which is sitting pretty close to their book value. So as long as this price trend, if it continues to move forward, I'll be adding back some shares. If you find these earnings previews helpful, I would appreciate you subscribing to the channel so you are alerted to future videos as they get posted. I would also be grateful if you like the video to help support this channel. I wish you the best in your investment journey and remember to trade well.